Alrighty, we're live.
Welcome.
Hey,
Welcome, Enis.
all the way from Colorado.
Not in Colorado. We are not in Colorado.
We are here in Nashville, Tennessee. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Inner Solutions live stream. So here we talk about all sorts of things mental health related. If you've got something that you're going through, whether it be anxiety, depression, depersonalization, panic attacks, whatever it is that you're going through, we're going to try to cover some topics that'll help. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We mainly do this to hear from you. We want to talk to you. We want to hear what you're going through. And if you have a question, please give us a bit of your time, and we'll do our best to help. So that being said, in general, we try to have somewhat of a theme, and this theme for tonight, I think, is a lot about processing emotions. When it comes to processing emotions, I think people don't really know what that can look like. And so here's a big overview, I guess. When it comes to processing emotions, you can have emotions from the past, present, come up in ways that are momentarily uncomfortable. And in that moment, it might seem like you gotta push them away or make them disappear or resist them. And the more you do that, the more you're kind of kicking the can down the road and making it harder for yourself, because these old emotions and these stuck energies, they want to come out just like you want them to come out. And so when we're processing them, it feels uncomfortable because they're moving through us. But as they come out, you feel lighter. You feel like you've released something. And in general, you feel better. So we're going to talk about what processing emotions can look like, what causes it, how to navigate it when it's happening, what are some of the benefits of it. And we're going to, again, dive into all kinds of mental health issues in general based off of the questions that we get tonight. But
yeah, I feel like the main attraction of what would bring people here is a lot of people here are suffering from high anxiety and panic attacks, and unprocessed or repressed emotion is one of the biggest causes, if not the biggest cause. You can read Dr. David Burns' book, and they have the whole suppressed emotion theory, which is a key indicator of what will cause anxiety. And so when we talk about processing and releasing emotion, we're talking about taking all this emotion that's been stuck or that's been repressed or that's been building up over time. And a lot of times the anxiety is just that trying to bubble out. And so it manifests in these wild physical symptoms. Now, one of the things that I hear a lot from clients and that I've experienced myself too is people will say things like, I dealt with this back in the day. Like maybe they went to therapy in their early 20s. They had some kind of trauma as a child and they dealt with it. They processed through, they kind of made peace with it. And then 10 years later, they start going back into having these weird symptoms or some kind of unsettling, like a panic attacks or some kind of unsettling mental state. And when I talk to them and say, well, what's going on? I say, I just see a lot of stuff back from this trauma, but I already dealt with that. Processing through emotions and releasing emotion is something that happens in stages. And so one of the key elements we're going to talk about today is releasing the resistance to the processing of emotions. So letting your emotions flow and really honoring how you feel and being okay with that. So, meaning basically, if there's, let's say you lose your father, there's a grieving process that happens right then. Then there may be another grieving process that happens 15 years later. Maybe something happens like you have children, or something happens where that triggers a lot of, I wish I had this guy here, and some really heavy emotion gets kicked up. Or during the first grieving process, you never fully process through whatever was going on there. And so we want to debunk some of these myths of like, you deal with something once and it's kind of done.
yeah.
A lot of times it goes through stages, and that's true with any sort of unprocessed emotion. Or it could also mean that you're not in a flow, like you've processed through something, but you're still storing and storing stress, storing emotions, suppressing how you feel and stuff like that. And so what we want to do is make a regular practice of what we're going to talk about today.
That's a really good first kind of myth to debunk, is having one big experience where, yeah, I cried once, I let it all out. Well, maybe you didn't let it all out. Maybe there's still some there. Another big myth that I see pretty often is the feeling that just because it was small, it means that it didn't leave a trace.
Yeah.
Like
big time.
Like, oh, that was just, a little something.
I hear that all the time with clients where it's like, I had a good childhood.
Yeah.
There was no sexual abuse. There was no physical abuse. It's like, okay, yeah, those are clear signs of likely traumas. But were you in a highly stressful situation? Were you rejected constantly? Were you pressured constantly? That kind of stuff leaves us just so much of a trace.
Were you ever embarrassed in front of people?
Right.
Were you ever, overwhelmed for a second? You
Yeah.
know? It's small stuff too that can kind of bottle up. And I remember one time, I think I was like in second grade, the teacher was like, she mispronounced my name, and I'm like, that's not how you say my name. And she was like kind of like, shut up.
Yeah.
And I remember like, oh, okay. And it got like very shut down.
Yeah.
And I that still sticks with me for whatever reason. That 7-year-old kid interpreted it as like, oh, this is a big deal. Because that's your world, right? When you're a kid, your whole world is what your classmates think of you, what the teacher and your parents think of you. So small comments can be misinterpreted all the time.
Definitely. In our mind, I hear a lot of times from clients too, and this has happened to me, that they'll wake up with like a song replaying in their head, or that some kind of suppressed memory will come they haven't thought of, and there's some hook, some weird nonsensical association. And I would say that any memories that stick with you, like significant memories, whether it's a feeling, I can remember being like 3 and waking up my father to watch Star Trek, and he got really mad. And I remember how scared I could still see his face. I still feel the emotion. Those are traumas. Those are living there inside the body. Now, when I think of it now, I don't feel anything tethered to it. I don't have a feeling that's associated with it. But I still remember that image because it was just so jarring. And so the self-judgment of what is a trauma or what is, something that should be something you have to deal with, it doesn't work.
I tell people instead of using a big word like trauma, I just say it's an unprocessed emotion, which could be anything from something really, really big, like a classical trauma, or something small like yesterday you get into an argument during breakfast with your spouse on your way to work, and because you're kind of late, you just never resolved it. So you go to work a little upset, and you didn't talk about it that night, and so now it's been a few days, and you never really addressed it. And maybe it was a small argument, a small
100%.
Little interaction, but it's still an unresolved emotion and something that doesn't have a resolution. So when you start to see it from that perspective, it really opens it up to it could be anything. It could be a small thing. And I encourage people to look at that and go, okay, we've all experienced some difficult situation that for whatever reason, maybe there was a time crunch, maybe there was a intimidating moment. For whatever reason, you didn't process it during that event. And so now, 2 days later, 20 years later, it's still kind of floating around in there, and it's nice to make space for it. So why don't we now get into some of for a moment, we can invite people, if you have questions, start giving us some questions in terms of what you're going through, what specific struggle or challenge you might have.
Sure. Or feel free just to share a story, check in. How's your heart today? We'd love to hear from you. We've got plenty to talk about, but we'd prefer to take questions.
Yeah.
We feel like that's the most helpful and helps to scatter against everybody in the chat.
Yeah. So as questions start to come in, we can explain a little bit about when you are having an old emotion start to come up, whether it's from 2 days ago, 20 years ago. At first, it can be uncomfortable for a number of reasons. One reason is, let's say you're sitting there on the couch and maybe it was a you small feel argument, overwhelmed. You start to feel like hold on. I've been sitting here enjoying my day, and all of a sudden there's this sense of uncomfort in my stomach, in my chest, in my head, and you're not sure where it's coming from. You're not sure why. Oftentimes people will, when they start to have these old emotions come up, the first instinct is to just blame something in your life. Like, oh, well, this is just because of the job or that relationship or something.
Mm.
And it very well may have been triggered by that. Maybe it's related to that on some level. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just an old emotion coming up. And the way that you respond in that moment makes all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have some questions out. For some reason, it's not showing up here, but we got some here.
Okay.
Let's address them. Do you have more to say about that? Sorry, I kind of tuned out for a second.
For sure we do, but like let's do the questions and then we can kind of come back and weave it together as we go.
Opal says, "What's up? What's up, Opal?" Edita says, "I need some inspiration today. Hard times, but I am maintaining calmness." Well, it's great that you're able to maintain your calm. What's the hard time, Edita? Can we get a little more information from you? And hi, thanks for coming.
And in terms of hard times, it sounds like that's been going around this last week.
I'm telling you, every client, the majority of my friends, something is going on.
Yeah.
There's just a difficulty. I've been told the horoscope, it's Scorpio season. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with that information. It's Scorpio season. It's the time for releasing and working through stuff, but a lot is bubbling. Maybe it's because the weather's changing and it's kind of that natural pivot that us sensitive people, which most of the people here probably are sensitive.
Maybe like election anxiety. I don't know. People getting riled up.
I don't know, man. It's been with clients like crazy too, though. There's a lot coming up.
And same here. We mentioned right before we started, I've been having a week myself, and guys, it happens. There's waves of stuff that from your past might come up to be processed, and so. Please share what is some of the specifics, or what are some of the inspirations you're hoping for?
Cindy says, "Hi guys, thank you for this. You're welcome." Carmen Camino, how are you? Italiano, I love that. My name is Cipollini.
Oh my God.
Cynthia, hi guys. Hey Cynthia. Brianna Rios says, "What do you recommend to do when your heart races and feel like you'll black out?" It's a good question.
Yeah. So, in terms of heart racing and feeling like you're going to pass out. That's an extremely, extremely common fear when it comes to anxiety, panic attacks. You're not alone there. A lot of people have gone through that. And I emphasize gone through it, right? They're not struggling with that anymore. What's happening there is your body is giving a natural reaction to fear. Feeling so worked up, it's going to make your heart rate a little faster. It's going to make you feel perhaps dizzy or disoriented. And you might feel like you're about to lose consciousness or pass out. And in terms of all of those things, the biggest thing to remember is you're not in danger, okay? You're not in any kind of real danger. You're not going to have a heart attack. You're not going to just lose consciousness. And in that moment when you're starting to feel a certain sense of overwhelm, it's important to ground yourself in a certain physical way. So instead of going into the mind and listening to the narrative and the storytelling that's happening in the mind, what's going to happen, what if I pass out, what if I die, what if my heart explodes, all this kind of stuff, those thoughts are going to naturally fuel the fear that you're already experiencing, making that whole situation worse. So the way to break out of that loop is to ground yourself in your body. And in that moment, your body may not be comfortable, but you can still be with it to the best of your ability. Sometimes I like to focus on my feet to get really aware of, well, what do my feet feel like? What is that connection between my feet and the ground? What does it feel like to have a certain physical embodiment, physical presence in my body? Because it's so easy to just get lost up above the neck and to get lost in the stories and what's about to happen, where you do get overwhelmed by all that. So that's one big piece of advice is knowing that the cause of a lot of those things is mental, is of thoughts, and then being able to just not give as much attention to the thoughts and have a little bit of attention on your body, particularly your feet and the ground. That's a good starting point. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, Brianna, I just want to say, you get checked out, you get scanned by your doctor when they're relatively positive that it's anxiety. Absolutely. It's what's happening is if you stay just with the sensations and block out the stories, and meaning you don't give credence to the thoughts like Enis was saying, you're breaking the feedback loop, and the feedback loop is what is spiraling you into feeling like the panic attack and making the intensity worse. So Brianna, what I want you to do is, number one, send us your email. You can private message us here on Facebook. We'll send you a copy of a book we wrote called The Panic Response Plan. And that has a boatload of strategies for what to do in the moment, and then a boatload of strategies of what to do outside of the moment to prevent panic attacks, but furthermore, to break that feedback loop of thoughts, feeding on emotions, feeding on thoughts, feeding on emotions, and growing and getting more intense. But it basically comes from what Enis said. Just stop believing the thoughts that you're having. And then you're exercising a different part of your brain, a different thought pattern, meaning you're noticing this part of you that's really scared while it's happening, that you're going to pass out. But the truth is you don't know that you'll black out. That feeling like you'll black out doesn't mean that you are blacking out, right?
And it gets easier the more it happens.
Exactly.
Because you start to develop a certain trust. Like, okay, wait a minute. I feel just like I did a day ago, 3 days ago, a week ago, and nothing happened then. So why would it be any different this time? And you start to get familiar with like, okay, yes, that sensation is uncomfortable, but it can't hurt me. It never has. So you have a certain, I'm okay. And it's not just the positive affirmation. It's like a acknowledgement of like, I am okay. I've always been okay. And this sensation can't hurt me.
Yeah. Diane says, I totally relate. So she's talking about storing stress and anxiety in the body or having old memories. Mm-hmm. I was bullied through elementary and some of middle school. There was a girl at work who triggers that bullied piece of me that makes me so upset. Yeah, so Diana, what I would say is that you have a part of you that's being activated. You have a raw spot that this girl is hitting of unprocessed emotion, a part of you that's stuck in that bullying. And furthermore, what's happening is that whatever she's saying is triggering that kind of smaller, more vulnerable part of you. And it's probably causing you to feel either like you want to fight, like you want to run away, some sort of fight or flight, or some sort of anger, or some sort of protective part that comes over to protect that very vulnerable part of you. So Diane, I would recommend to you, you try to do a meditation where you not only get in touch with this angry part of you and try to connect with it, see if you can differentiate and connect with it, but then see if it'll let you go into that more vulnerable part and see if that vulnerable part is willing to kind of show itself to you and if there's anything that it needs from you. And if that feels like something that you couldn't do, Diane, I would recommend you schedule a free call with us and that we could kind of run you through that process and try to work that process with you as well.
I have an analogy that I think will be very, very helpful for anybody who gets triggered by other people. As Jim said, we have these kind of sensitive parts that can get easily triggered and you start to feel bad. You start to feel overwhelmed. And oftentimes we blame that person and say, well, the reason I feel bad is because of that person. If I just wasn't around them, I would never feel bad, or it's this situation. Well, here, think about it this way. Imagine that there is a bug on the back of your head. And every time that you see a certain person, they give you a pat on the back, and that jostles the bug, and it bites you. And so you feel this pain in your back. And you might start to think like, wait a minute, this person, every time they hit me or they tap me on the back, I start to feel this pain. It must be them. It must be them causing the pain. All I have to do is not let them touch me anymore, and I'll be okay. That's one way to interpret it. But the bug is still there if you take that interpretation. Another way to interpret it is to say, wait a minute. Every time that person there's a pain, is it really the person? And so in that moment, there's some curiosity. And you look, and there's a bug there. And you realize, oh, that's the true cause of my pain. So you address the bug, you remove it, whatever you want to do. And from then on, that person can tap you in the same way, but it's not causing any pain because the underlying source is removed. So this is if you've heard anyone say something like, I was grateful for that negative situation that happened to me because it was my biggest teacher. This is similar. There's been people who they triggered me in the past, and now I am so grateful for all the stuff they said and did because it helped me see all of my sticking points, the bugs that I have, or as Jim would say, the parts that are in need of some attention. And when you start to go through life from that perspective, it really changes everything from being, fundamentally, you go from being this victim to being someone on the quest for growth. From then on, anytime you get upset, anytime you get triggered, you can ask yourself, what part of me is getting activated right now? How can I identify it? A great coach that I watch sometimes, Preston Smiles, he mentions being buttonless. You know, we all have our buttons that people can push. Like, you ever heard that expression? Oh yeah, he really pushes my buttons, you know? And it's true, we have buttons. And when you identify them, get clear on them, and resolve them, then over time you can become buttonless. And imagine what that could be like. You move through life. It's the same situation, same people tapping you on the back, same people cutting you off on the highway, same people saying whatever, but there's no reaction anymore because the underlying issue has been processed and resolved.
Yeah, the processing is really the best way to empower yourself and really take your power back, to be in a state of receptivity, in a state of openness instead of a state of reactivity towards people. Because if you're in a state of reactivity with people, you're just a ping pong ball being popped around. But this person has control over you, this person has control over you, and it feels like chaos. Whereas if you're in a state of openness, curiosity, receptivity, it's like you're moving slower, you're processing things, you're giving yourself a second to just notice how you feel with different stimuli, and it's a completely different existence.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Katie Bush, I'm having horrible panic attacks. I feel stuck and lost. Please help. Okay, Katie, first of all, send us your email. We'll send you a copy of the panic response plan so you have a 70-page resource as well as the audio version of it to coach you through exactly what to do. But I want to tell you a few quick things. Number one, a panic attack is not going to kill you. It's not going to make you go crazy. It's not going to make you lose control. Okay? You're being caught in what we call the feedback loop, which is you have a little piece of a panic attack happens. Maybe it's a thought, maybe it's a feeling, maybe it's a physical sensation. That triggers a thought, which triggers an emotion, which triggers a thought, which triggers an emotion, and it builds on top of each other. So the key here, Katie, is to have a plan for when you're having a panic attack of the best thing you can do. When a panic attack starts, no matter what you do, it's going to have to run its course a little bit. Meaning, like, even though you may be doing the right thing to stop it, it's not going to stop. So your key is to not believe the thoughts that you're having, not believe the stories that your mind is telling you. The key is to stay as grounded as you can and say, hey, this just needs to run its course. My body's released adrenaline. It's released glucose. The heart racing, the dizziness, the weird sensations are totally normal for this, and they're going to pass in the moment. So in that book, Katie, there is a 4-step process of exactly what to do. It starts with 4x4 breathing, moves into some mental reframing, and that's right in the book there. Beyond that, it's going to be doing what we're talking about a lot today, which is starting to understand, well, when did these start? Get really curious about why they're happening, and then find a way to, if you have stuck emotion, figure out what are the things in your life that you're doing are contributing to your stress level, contributing to your anxiety, and what are the things you can do to break those cycles, behavioral cycles, and start to really, really live a different life where you're not storing stress and anxiety that's manifesting in panic attacks. Or maybe there's physical things you need to do to destimulate your nervous system. Maybe you need to change your diet, change your exercise, start meditating, get out in nature, change your sleep patterns, change your social circle and all your social behaviors, watch your media diet, all that kind of stuff. All these are the the variables into what can be causing you panic attacks. And so all that's going to be in the book. Katie, send us your email and we'll send it to you. Anything you want to add?
That was great, man.
It was really good.
That's great.
Thanks. Yeah.
That's a good overview. And it's such a big question that, it's hard to answer in 1 minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, Katie, you're not stuck. And
exactly.
Just reach out.
You're not alone. By the way, all of us here pretty much have suffered from panic attacks. That's why we're here.
Lisa says, is this how your past and memories can lead to anxiety and panic attacks today? And in a way, yes. You're having these unprocessed emotions that are coming up, and you're also having these buttons that are getting pushed. And if you don't know how to allow those emotions to move through you and be processed, if you don't know how to identify those sticking points and address them, then you kind of just move through life continuously resisting these old emotions and continuously getting triggered by daily situations. But as you allow those unprocessed emotions to move through you, then you feel lighter, better. And as you become more aware of your buttons and of these parts that need attention, then you become more and more difficult to trigger. You can move through your life. Even if nothing changes on the external, you are still happy, peaceful, calm. And so, yeah, looking at the internal world and all the emotional baggage that you're carrying can be enough to pull you out of anxiety.
Let me compare these lists. I want to make. Okay, yeah, it looks like they're lining up now. Okay.
Cool.
Dawn says it's COVID times. Yeah, I don't know what that means. It is COVID time. Well, I do know what it means. Yeah. The whole. I don't want to go against the grain.
Let them have it, Jim.
No. Not let them have it. Don't set it up like that. It's not that. So one of the ways to cope, a lot of people suffer from seasonal depression, right? One of the key ways to cope is to find the joy in the season, right? So a lot of times winter, everything's dying, snow's falling, it's cold, it's harder to go outside, there's less time in nature, there's a little less sunlight. One of the key strategies to dealing with tough times is just trying to find the positive things in the situation. And with COVID, there can be some positives. This is a beautiful time for self-reflection. Is it scary? Yes. So what you have to do is, number one, process the emotions you're going through, meaning like, just be aware if watching the news is triggering you, if talking about it is triggering you, if wearing a mask and seeing everybody in a mask is triggering you. Take some time to do a meditation to just deal with the different kind of parts inside that you have, the different opinions inside, the scared parts of you. Because I promise you that at your core, you're very calm and confident about it. You're very accepting about it. But there's just a kind of more surface level fear and, to be honest, a more surface level discomfort and kind of traumatization of the difference of life. Meaning, like, it can be hard to evolve into a state of being that you feel like is worse than the one before, and that's out of your control. But what you can also do is start to find the beautiful things about COVID times. Are you home with your husband more? Maybe it's a time to get some new books and to expand upon your relationship. Maybe it's time to do some journaling or write a book or find a project that you've been putting off if you have more time at home. If you're, maybe it's a beautiful time for self-reflection or to catch up on some music that you haven't listened to in a long time. See if you can list out 50 or 100 reasons of what you can do with the situation with COVID that could be productive. Maybe it's a time to make 5 phone calls a day to people who who are struggling too, and reconnect with some old friends or something. This is not a kind of gimmicky thing. This is a real way to cope with differentiation of a situation that's kind of out of your control. So I've been trying to do that with COVID, and it's given me a lot. I've realized there's a lot of things business-wise that it's given me opportunity to get like these video streams up. And just when I start listing the stuff, I'm like, wow, I don't think I would have done that if I didn't have this time or wasn't shut down like this.
Yeah, going back to if you take that approach of using this time to move forward in your health, your mental health, whatever it may be, you really, really could look back on this a year or two from now and think, wow, I'm actually kind of grateful that I was put in that situation. Now, I understand there's people out there who have lost loved ones.
Totally.
I'm not talking about
Yeah,
that.
we're not talking about ignoring that or
Yeah.
Downplaying or
Yeah.
like ignoring the risks of
It's
it.
just as you were saying, making the best out of the situation that you're in and finding the opportunities for growth. When that person triggers you, yeah, you could just get mad at them and ignore them, or you could take that as an opportunity to go, why does that trigger me?
Mm.
What if it didn't? What if I found a way to let go of that, and then it opened up a whole world of opportunity? You may have best friends and potential lovers and potential business opportunities and career changes and hobbies that are not happening because there's just a couple small things that are blocking you, because maybe you don't feel comfortable getting out and joining a club, or putting yourself out there because of embarrassment, or putting yourself out there because of whatever it might be. And making that shift can unleash a whole world of joy, of happiness. I like to remind people, it's not just about diminishing, getting rid of the anxiety, getting rid of the depression. Just because you're not anxious doesn't necessarily mean you're joyful. Doesn't mean you're happy. And that requires a different sort of intention with looking at the nature of your body, looking at the nature of your whole system, your nervous system, your whole body is set up in a way that it could be joyful all the time. And there's so many practices out there, meditation, yoga. There's so many different things that can transform your body on a chemical level, to the point where you feel better most of the time. You sleep better. You enjoy the day better. But what are the things that are getting in the way? I mean, this is if you're somebody who's got more time on their hands than usual, start looking into these practices. I mean, really, a cornerstone of what makes my life run is having some kind of daily practice, like meditation and lifting weights. If I can have a week where I do both of those things, typically it keeps me very, very grounded. If I go a week without those two things, I start to feel a lot of the old kind of anxieties start to come up. So these aren't, sometimes they're not even nice to have. They're just kind of essential parts of your life.
Yeah. And again, this is not to, you can try this, an exercise like listing all the things you could do or what it's given you. But also, if it's something you can't force it into you, basically. If you try to do that and you still feel extraordinarily anxious, that's okay. Don't add a layer of shame on, like, oh my God, I did this and I'm not even grateful. I can't even. No, that's okay. It's totally okay. Tina says, COVID anxiety, county getting hit hard this week, feeling anxious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we just touched on that quite a bit. It's like there's going to be the risk of getting sick. And I think one of the people down there, Edita, says she recently got diagnosed even. And yeah, it's like when you're in the middle of it, there's going to be a lot of fear. But notice the way that fear works hasn't changed. The reason you're afraid is still the same reason you've been afraid of other things for the last decade. There is a narrative of what's about to happen in your mind, and suddenly you think you can tell the future. You can't. You don't know what's going to happen next. You really don't. Statistically, I can say you're probably going to be fine, and statistically, I can talk in terms of probabilities, but even I don't know what's going to happen next. But the point is, when people hear that, there's this mechanism in the mind that just goes to the worst case scenario of like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen next. That means the worst thing is going to happen. Like, no. that too, you don't know.
Yeah.
You just don't know. And so when we look around us and we see people getting sick and we see the possibility of getting hurt, or people we love getting hurt, it is tough, because there's so much material for the mind to work with. It's so ripe with opportunity to tell a story of what's going to happen or how you're going to get hurt.
Sure.
And the big part of it is just staying watching out for those kinds of thoughts and those kinds of stories of telling the future, judging what's going to happen next, and basically scaring yourself into this corner, when in all that's needed and all that you ever can do is take it moment by moment.
It's important to remember the catastrophization or the sensationalization part of you is there for a reason. It's there to say, like, hey, like, this could really happen. It's either a really scared part of you that's really worried, or it's there to say, like, wow, this could really escalate. Let's take care of ourselves, or we value being alive. We value being healthy. Let's watch out for this. And it's important to know that can be really reinforced or agitated with media or like news, which is kind of their job is to sensationalize. Their job is not to necessarily talk about the gray area, to talk about the black or the white area, these really polar extremes to get you to watch. And so part of what maybe you can do is turn off the news, substitute the media you're getting there for some more wholesome, maybe healing or calming media.
Yeah.
Second full moon comes this Saturday, and it is also time change in Halloween. I don't know about the moons and the Halloween. Like, I don't know anything about that. I have a lot of friends into astrology and stuff, and I did like a horoscope chart last week, and it was wildly accurate, and it wasn't that random. It was pretty dead on. I don't know what to do with that information. Next question. No, seriously. Yeah. I don't know what to do with that information.
Well, I think
it may play a factor. I have no idea.
Yeah, I think we'd be silly to I think in the West there's this idea of individualism that's bleeding into everything, where we start to forget that, hey, we are totally connected to this earth, and the cycles that this earth moves through affect us on some deep way. And so I don't know if I'm going to sit here and explain like scientifically how all that works. I don't know if anybody can, but I think it's on some level common sense that everything is connected and that things are fluctuating and moving in cycles. Even our sun has a 12-year cycle that it goes through. And I mean, I don't have any proof of this, but I would not be surprised in the slightest if that 12-year cycle of the sun had some effect on the environment of this planet. I'm not saying that you're more likely to win the lottery or not on a particular day, but just the basic recognition that we're all connected, everything is connected and affecting each other. And this is partly why we love IFS so much, is because it's a system approach. It's treating your body as an connected, holistic whole. You're not just, a brain with the body. People treat the body as like all it is used for is to move the brain around from room to room, and it's more than that, right? Everything's very connected. So when you look at your body and all the ways that it's causing anxiety, depression, joy, happiness, peace, that is a big room to explore. It's not just about what's happening out in the world, whether you got the job or not, whether the relationship is going well or not. It's also about all the little things that you're experiencing, all the food that you're eating, all the media that you're taking in, all the music that you're listening to, the people that you're hanging out with, the chemicals that you're exposing yourself to, the air that you're breathing, the time of day, the time of year, all this stuff. It has some effect, and we're all under the influence of this world that we live in. And so looking at that can be important, and at least it's worth acknowledging. So
Tina says second blue full moon in a month in a few days, perfect timing. Okay. Yeah.
So Cheryl says, father passed away young and mother became an alcoholic starting during my teen years. A lot happened, and I tried for years to get her to talk about it, but she never would. She has now passed away, and I feel like I will never have closure. Never got an apology. How do you release something like that? That's a good question. So it's like, yeah, usually when there is a situation to be resolved, it's really, really helpful to be able to go to that person and say, I'm sorry, or for them to say, I'm sorry, and to have that moment of resolution. That can be really helpful. But yeah, if there's, for some reason, they passed away or you're just not on speaking terms anymore, how do you get that inner resolution without the other person? And so part of that is going into yourself and making a connection with the parts of you that are hurting, and having that moment of heart to heart with them. So imagine, for example, let's say that there's a teenager part of you who is upset and frustrated with what's going on in their family. Connecting, I mean, literally like almost like having an introduction to that internal part of you, that teenager girl, and talking to her, seeing what do you believe, what are you going through, what do you feel, why do you feel that way? And in that moment, you have the opportunity to give her whatever it is that she needs. If she needs an apology, you can give her that. If she needs a hug, you can give her that. If she needs, I don't know what, you can give her that support that she didn't get. And it doesn't have to come from that other person who is involved. It can come from within to say, okay, what is it that I am hung up about? Is it something that the other person did which made me feel mad? Is it that they never said I love you, so I felt unloved? Is it that they held me responsible for something and I always felt guilty about it? Is it that they, diving into that deeper emotion of, am I afraid? Am I sad? Am I guilty? Am I feeling unworthy? What is the deeper emotion that you feel is unresolved? And when you unresolve that emotion, then the exact situation is not as important anymore. So why that unresolved emotion came to be in the first place isn't as important as it's here now. So you can address it without necessarily undoing the past or getting that apology or putting things back in physical ways. That's one avenue that you can go down. Do you want to add to that?
I love it. I mean, I think, yeah, right. Dealing with these hurting parts of you that are stuck, and never got an apology. Beyond that, I mean, I would work to just, be the attachment figure for the part that feels like it needs that closure. There's other meditations you can do or visualizations that you can do, kind of trying to get in touch with, if that's someone you're really close to, like your father. I have a lot of visitations from my father who's passed now, and it's not a visitation like an external visitation. It's more like a rising of his imprint and his impact on me. And I kind of know how he would deal with certain situations or messages that he would say to me nowadays. And so clearing the path for that to rise can be a really great one, to feel like, the spirit lives in you, or however you want to kind of personify or communicate that, but kind of getting out of the way to let that come forward and to allow that unmolested energy to purely be open and attached with you.
Yeah. In a way, it's like saying you can still get that apology, at least visualizing it. It may not be the same as the real thing, but that can be enough to get you into touch with that feeling that's unresolved.
And I would look at, why do you want an apology? Why is that the specific closure that you're looking for? Does that make sense? And I'm sorry, I misread the question, that she's talking about her mother, not her father. But you want that apology that she became, and maybe instead of an apology, Cheryl, what you can do is start to write out the reasons, knowing your mother, knowing her backstory, or exploring that and trying to understand why she became an alcoholic, and trying to come from a more curious and compassionate state towards her instead of I want an apology. that part of you that feels like that's the only conclusion that you will give you closure, that part needs help, because that's a very, very kind of black or white thinking, narrow, conclusive situation that part's looking for. So I would try to understand why it wants that apology, why that part in particular, and then I would again meet that and become the attachment figure and help it and be like, look, we need to be compassionate, we need to be understanding. What do you need? Like, what do you really need? Is it the apology, or is it just for things to make sense? Or is it to feel like it wasn't your fault? I'm sure there's some deeper motivation that's looking for that apology. And that's what I would look for.
Yeah.
Greece says, como quisiera que fuera en español, ya que sufro de ansiedad y ataques de pánico. Greece, I don't know if we can answer you in Spanish, but you suffer from panic attacks. Okay. So I'd say, uno... I don't know how to say this very well. I haven't practiced much. I'm trying to say...
Do you speak Spanish?
Very, very little.
Oh, okay.
I've been speaking more lately, but very, very little. She's saying, hey, I would like this to be in Spanish, but I suffer from anxiety and panic attacks. So, Greece, I mean, you can give us some more information. Necesita información more.
I think we'll have to move on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was trying to tell her in Spanish that it's not going to kill you.
Yeah. We can look that. We should make a Spanish version of the panic response plan. Let's do that at some point.
God.
Edith says, I'm scared, but I know my father is recovering in the hospital, doing better. My mom is positive, but has no symptoms. Okay. Just have to keep telling myself that I'm healthy. Still getting a little nervous. Okay. Well, I'm glad that your father is feeling better. Is on the recovery, and I think that's a good sign that your mom has no symptoms. So all three of you got it. That's tough. That's scary. I think in those situations it's there is a little bit of a difference between what we talk about here a lot, which is anxiety, panic attacks, which is more of a
we're dealing more with irrational anxiety or kind of self-induced anxiety.
Yeah. Whereas this is you're facing real danger.
Yeah.
And so there's a natural fear there that, as the situation progresses, I'm sure will resolve.
Eddie, so I would also encourage you to take this opportunity to be like, well, is there some unresolved stuff either in your life or with your relationship with your father or mother? Meaning, like, if you're really scared about losing your father, losing your mother, beyond just you love them and a parent, really take a second to explore. Is there something that they give you that you don't feel capable you could give yourself? Or is there something that's unsaid between you or some of them? Is there a bridge that you can gap in there? Because a lot of times, obviously, if something happened to you, I'd be so sad. But if there'd be kind of auxiliary anxieties, if there was something that was unsaid or something unresolved completely. Right. So I would use this opportunity to just do some journaling or take some notes of, is there something that's unresolved between the three of you, or is there something that you feel really reliant on them to get, whether it's a financial thing, a living, anything? It could be anything.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Where any time that you have unresolved situations in your life, whether it be something that is as cold and dry as logistics about your funeral, or as emotional as never saying I love you to somebody, regardless, those loose ends can make the anxiety that much worse. And by resolving them, it just really cuts clear to like what is actually the issue. So Brianna says, thank you so much, guys. I had my first panic attack in college. Literally on campus, I was hospitalized for a week. Thankfully, I'm learning how to cope. You guys are amazing doing this for people who have questions. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Brianna.
Don says, they say to go with the feelings. I'm not sure what you're referencing there, Don. Sorry, that 30 minutes ago. We take our time with these questions. Huh?
Yeah, we're about 30 minutes behind. We're getting there.
Yeah. So sorry. Maybe expand on what you mean, or send us a private message if you have by the way, anybody if you have a question that we didn't answer, or we answered but not in a way that you really wanted it to, send us a private message, and maybe we can try to get more of a direct response through that. Dan says, yep, fight or flight and or tears is what kicks in. Yeah, for sure. That's a big part of it.
So she had the woman at work who was triggering reminding her of her bullying
Yeah.
from middle school.
And she's saying, but I don't want to cry and it makes it worse. Let her think she has the power and won. So that's interesting, right? It's like there's a part of you that doesn't want to let the other person have that win
Mm-hmm.
of hurting you. And so, I mean, look at that's a good example of like, what if you didn't feel any sort of shame about feeling bad? What if it was like, okay, I felt bad and it's okay that they knew. It's okay that they knew that. Then you wouldn't feel any pressure to hide your emotions. You wouldn't feel any pressure to cover that up. So you wouldn't feel pressure to avoid situations. Like you could look her in the eyes as you feel bad. You could show up to work not feeling that great. And so from there, it's one less thing to cause anxiety. It's one less thing to bring you down. And as you start to chip away at all these little triggers, it just, again, the situation hasn't changed, but you have. And so suddenly what used to cause you stress just doesn't anymore.
Mm. Yeah.
Lisa says, can the symptoms you experience during a panic attack change or increase in the number of things that happened? Can the symptoms you experience?
I think she means like, can your symptoms get worse, or can they get more frequent? Can they get more intense?
I mean, there's some correlation, and I think is also saying like in the number of things that happened. It's like, yeah, there's a correlation between if you have a lot of unprocessed stuff, you might have some more anxiety and you might have some more emotions to deal with. And sometimes they can come up at the same time. So an issue from 5 years old and an issue from 15 years old can come up at the same time. And it can be a little bit confusing about how do I deal with this? So yeah, it's just best to take it moment by moment as whatever comes up. Try to be as clear about what it is, like where is this coming from? But you don't always have to figure it out. Sometimes it's stuff that you don't remember and there isn't an obvious answer, but you don't have to figure it out. It's enough to just stay with the sensation as it moves through you.
I love this question from Jamie. It's something I relate to. I started having anxiety at 16. Now I'm 40, off and on for many years in between. It is extra difficult some days because I work in EMS and some situations trigger my panic and anxiety even more. Jamie, I can relate. I worked in a level 3 facility with teenage sex offenders for years. It was a highly, highly stressful situation. There was a lot of fights. There was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of physical threat. And so I learned quite a few things. Number one is that I needed sleep, exercise. Like I needed all the things to destimulate my nervous system because you're just in a high stress situation. Number two was I had to really start listing specifically out certain triggers that I had to focus on them and find alternative ways to deal with them. So for me, it was a lot of times being triggered by a kid being threatening towards me or a kid bullying another kid, something that I was transferring emotion into a situation like that. For you, Jamie, it's thinking about, are some of these situations causing you to kind of activate or relive a trauma that you've faced before? And if they are, if there's a specific correlation in there, that's definitely something to get with a therapist or a coach and start to process through, because you're actually not stuck in those situations. Now, that being said, if you're not sleeping properly, if you're working 18-hour shifts, if you're doing some of the crazy stuff that I was doing back in the day, when your body's hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, you're just in a state of vulnerability, where as far as anxiety and panic attacks, your body just can't handle that kind of stress when you're on low sleep. Your blood sugar's all unregulated, or you're not your blood's not flowing, and your body's not balanced, your nervous system. So those two pieces are some of the key ingredients to finding balance in a highly stressful situation like that. Is just getting really intentional about listing certain things that trigger you, exploring that with somebody else, and then making sure your nervous system is as calm and destimulated, rested, fed, and watered as possible. Like you're a potted plant, basically.
Yeah, I love that. That's it's a really good reminder that your nervous system in those situations is going to get repeatedly triggered. So you got to have a good destimulating practice.
It's why they say mind, body, spirit, because they work synergistically. You can't have one without the other, and they feed off of each other so much.
Don says, I like that, buttonless. That is really a beautiful way to be.
Empowered.
Just buttonless. Moving through life, you're not a victim. You're just someone that's continuing to uncover more and more buttons and becoming less and less, more and more buttonless in the process. Opal says, yes, it has rained 4 days now. Feel like crap here in Missouri. Is there something I can do to feel better? My thoughts are all over the place.
Go out in the rain, Opal. No joke. Go out in the rain. Just go out, feel the rain. There's this weird mental block we have, especially with weather and stuff. It's like, oh, it's raining, I can't go out. And that restriction feels so just negative and miserable. Go out in the rain, Opal. Get out there, feel the rain, feel how good the water feels. Even if it's a little cold, go out for a second. Don't catch a cold, don't get pneumonia.
Yeah.
But just get out there and just break that thought pattern. Smash it with like the Hulk. Just get out there. But also find some fun stuff to do besides, find some cool rainy day activities, and then just do some meditation. Check in with yourself. What is it about the rain that's bothering you? What parts do you feel restricted? Do you feel sad? Do you feel connected? Whatever.
I love that. Katie says, thank you so much. Opal says, thank you. You just made me feel better. Hey, you already made me feel better.
30 minutes ago. Yeah.
Don says, meditation daily helps tremendously. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Noah says, hey guys. Hey, how's it going? Opal says, sorry, I have to go to my grandson, just feel, and he has to go to ER. Well, good luck with that. Amanda says, does one have to be diagnosed by a physician to have SAD? I'm not sure. I think we all have our cycles, even though...
SAD is seasonal
affective disorder.
Seasonal affective disorder.
And it's like, it's what you're talking about when during, winter, or sometimes for people it's summer, you just have a spur of depression. And we're not physicians, so we're not entirely
we don't diagnose.
In the world of diagnoses. But the way that we typically see diagnoses is number one, it's not a life sentence. For one, it's not like you now have this and you must have this forever. No, you can overcome your diagnosis. The second thing is, all that is just a generalized way of describing what you're going through. If you have cycles, which we all do, in some way, you could probably get diagnosed with that. And so, don't worry too much about, this is the diagnosis I have. This is what I must do. Just look at it from a more holistic way of, okay, during this time of year, this is what I feel. What can I do about it? Can I try light therapy? Can I try vitamin D? Can I try taking a brief road trip to a sunny area? Can I try changing my diet, exercising more, doing all the other stuff we talk about, like meditation, yoga, diving into cognitive therapy, IFS, just organizing certain events with friends during that time, family gatherings, looking at what associations you have with that time of year. Are you typically stuck inside? Do you typically have to work? Is there a way to maybe schedule a vacation around that time? Getting creative with it, getting intentional about, I want to feel better, and let's see what I can do to feel better.
Beautiful, man. Great answer. Cheryl says, oh, thanks. You're welcome. Eddie says, thank you. You're welcome. Dawn says, sorry if I wasn't clear. My therapist said not to fight the feelings of the heart racing. She said just to breathe through it. Yeah, I mean, Dawn, we call that resistance. And one of the keys to getting through panic attacks is releasing all the resistance, meaning what are you going to fight? You can't fight your heart to slow down. What you want to do is just not believe the thoughts and just coach these scared parts of you in that, hey, this is going to pass. Like, we just need to let it run its course. Bodies release adrenaline. The heart rate is totally normal in alignment with the chemicals that the body has released. Nothing to worry about. Our fight or flight mechanism is working, and it just fired when it didn't need to fire.
Yeah. Oh, you got this one?
Sure, go.
we had a bit of a brain spurt, guys. Sorry. Rita says, my daughter has autism. Her day-to-hab program is closed due to COVID-19, so she's home full-time. At times, she has a yelling meltdown and triggers panic attacks in me. How to handle this? How to handle this better? Thank you.
Your daughter has autism. Her day-to-hab program is closed due to COVID-19. She's home full-time. She's yelling. So the yelling is what triggers a panic attack in you. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's tough because this is someone you care about, obviously.
Someone you're very non-verbally connected with as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Deeply
Extremely-
cellularly connected with.
Cellularly connected. You very likewise are picking up on some of the emotions that she's going through. So whether you want to call that empathy or something more, you're affected by that. And of course you are. And so that's a really good question in terms of how to deal with it. So there's multiple levels to that. Me and Jim have to deal with this all the time when we talk to people. If we talk to multiple people throughout the day, how do you not let it totally drain you by the end of the day? Because it's easy to get affected by these people's emotions, what they're going through. So number one is when you're very open here in your heart and in the front of, and you're kind of like your guard is down, you're open, you're transparent, and that emotion, that yelling, that energy coming in from your daughter, it can come in and hit you, and you'll feel it, and it sucks. The key is open up the back too, so that it comes and goes through. Okay? It's not something you have to hold on to. It's not something you have to carry. It's just something you momentarily feel as it moves through you. So that's one thing. You don't have to hold on to it. Create that flow through you so that you can almost visualize it. I mean, you can literally visualize that in the moment when you're like, I'm overwhelmed with emotion from my daughter. Imagine it coming in and out at the same time, flowing through you. The second thing is reminding yourself sometimes, like verbally, this isn't mine. This isn't mine. And this isn't me. More importantly, this isn't me. When you have that sensation, whatever it is, depression, anxiety, and it's inhabiting your body, you can say, I see you, anxiety. You're not me, but I welcome you into the space that I am. And hold it there. In a sense, make space for it. Non-resistance, total non-resistance, where you're letting that feeling come through. So as it's moving through you, you're not even resisting the flow through you. You're just letting that pass. And to the greatest extent possible, just start to explore some of the triggers. Like when she's screaming, do you feel like you should be doing something? Do you feel like guilty, as if maybe like, if I was doing a better job, she wouldn't be having this? And so you're feeling like you're blaming yourself for what she's going through? Or is there more anger, like maybe like resentment towards this person? And so when they're yelling, it's popping up a bunch of anger. Take a look at both of those. If you're feeling guilt and blaming yourself, if you're feeling resentment and anger towards her, both of those can be triggered. Those are the buttons, so to speak, that may be getting pushed during that moment. So as you resolve those and I recommend doing that with a therapist or somebody that you really trust, and resolving those, then the next time that she yells, it won't trigger as much. But fundamentally, beyond that, it's just like every other panic attack. You notice the thoughts, you notice whatever's whatever you're believing, whatever you think is about to happen, that you're scared might happen, and you stay present to the body. You ground yourself. You cut that feedback loop to the best of your ability. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I would say the only thing I would add is you can practice mindfulness meditation, and that can help a lot. So mindfulness meditation practice is sitting and kind of just noticing, observing how you feel, observing the sounds around you. And that can translate into helping with your startle reflex. If something about the yelling is kind of overstimulating your senses, especially your hearing sense. I get that sometimes. And sometimes people with anxiety, they can be really sensitive to light or things like that can stimulate a panic attack for them. You can do a mindfulness meditation, or you could even set up meditations where there's somebody, making loud noises around you. And when you're in that meditation, you just practice not reacting and just noticing how you feel. And that can really help with your startle reflex if that's kind of startling and pushing you over the edge. But I would say too, Rita, that just keeping the anxiety level low and your stress level low is a key, because it sounds like it's taking you from maybe a base state of like 4, 5, 6 out of 10 anxiety and pushing you into that 10, 11, over off the charts range to the panic attack. Mm-hmm. Becca says, "Hi, Jim and Enis. My son is severely autistic and primarily nonverbal. I have a lot of anxiety, especially when we are in the car. My biggest fear is we will get in a car accident and he will get severely hurt and he won't know, or I will get severely hurt and he won't know what is going on and isn't able to communicate with anyone. I'm not sure how to handle it." So how would you handle a recurring thought like that, a recurring fear?
So there's a couple angles there. One is are you more bothered by the visualization of that potential, or so here, does that bother you when you're sitting on the couch at home and everything's fine, or does it only bother you when you're driving in the car? So that's important to differentiate the way it gets triggered. I'm gonna assume from just the way you worded it that it's when you're in the car, and so it's like you're driving and there's all these images flashing through your mind of what if this happens, what if that happens. Primarily, as you said, what if we get into an accident, and this unbearable thought of, oh goodness, what if he's all alone and doesn't know what's going on. So there's a couple things happening there. One is that you're putting yourself in their shoes and using your imagination to such an extent that you're kind of living out this experience that isn't happening now and probably won't ever happen. That might seem basic, but let's just remember that this imagination that you're imagining, it's not happening now and it probably won't ever happen. Just speaking in terms of probabilities. From there, even the possibility that could happen is enough to create some fear, create some anxiety, for sure. So what you want to look at that and go, look at what can you do to start to minimize it? As Jim was saying, from an unresolved perspective, can you have that conversation with him? Can you explain that on any level to him? If you can't, if he just wouldn't understand that, that's okay. You could have some form of emergency backup to where maybe give him a device or like an emergency phone. I know I'm not familiar with where to get these, but I've seen people with like these emergency devices where they can press a button and it'll call somebody, so that at least you have some peace of mind to know, like, okay, if something were to happen to me, he would be able to call for help. So these are like the logistical ways, like the practical ways to address the fear, so that the root of it being like, I don't want him to be alone, is taken care of. But beyond that, you want to start to look at what possible role does a thought like that play? Why would someone have a thought like that? Everyone fears car accidents, getting into a car accident, but why that particular one? I don't have enough information just based off of the paragraph. Sure. If you want, you can schedule a call with us. Feel free to reach out. We'd love to get on the phone with you and have a free 45-minute chat. But beyond that, it's looking at like why would someone have a thought like that in the first place? What is it? What underlying issue is it revealing?
Yeah, I would say, Rebecca, do you have a lot of thoughts like that are kind of catastrophizing situations, or is this a solo one? To me, it shows that you, number one, care about your son, and there's a part of you that really values his safety and that he doesn't feel scared or alone, or doesn't isn't in a situation where he will be trapped or see you hurt. But yeah, we need a lot more information to really make a good judgment call. But ultimately, Becca, it's, we use a mode of therapy called internal family systems, which breaks your thought patterns into parts. And so we'd want to get in touch with this part of you and get really curious about it and say, hey, I see what you're showing me. Like, what is the reason you're showing me? I'd love to know more about the motivation behind it. And then eventually letting it know, like, hey, like, I appreciate if it tells you that it cares or it's worried about your son, saying, I really appreciate it. Do you feel like you have to keep doing this? Do you feel like do you feel like you're burdened and that you have to keep showing this to me so that I'll pay attention or whatever? And it'll probably lead you to some event that happened where some situation happened where there was somebody trapped or couldn't communicate or something like that may have happened in your past, or something that your subconscious is relating it to this event. And then we can kind of unburden that part to let it know, like, hey, I see you. Like we've taken precautions. It's very unlikely. And that part can attach to you in a healthy way and eventually probably stop putting these images that are upsetting to other parts of your system in your head.
And again, reach out, send us a message. That goes for you and anybody else who wants to get the panic response plan, who wants to ask a further question, who wants to inquire about the free call, whatever it is, reach out.
Yeah, no strings.
So Edith says, playing the puddles like a kid. Absolutely.
100%. Just talking to Opal.
Yeah.
I appreciate your advice. Thank you both. Thanks for coming, Jamie. Do you think she's a newbie, right?
Yeah. Lisa says, sorry for all the questions. Before I even get into the question, I just want to say you don't have to apologize.
Yes, keep asking.
There's a lot. Sometimes people. I meet a lot of people. I meet a lot of people like this. They apologize when they don't need to. Apologize if you made a mistake. If you made a real mistake, then apologize for it. Asking a question in a Q&A is not a mistake, so there's nothing to apologize for.
We love you, Lisa.
So she says, can dizziness and blurred vision be part of a panic attack? Definitely.
Two of the most common symptoms that I hear about.
Definitely. And typically you'd be surprised how many different symptoms anxiety can make because it affects the nervous system. So the nervous system is touching all your senses. And so all kinds of symptoms like feeling too hot, too cold, having a sense of dizziness, disorientation, all of that can happen from panic attacks and anxiety and an overstimulated nervous system.
Katie says, what is it when you can't see images when you close your eyes? How do you get those? Like when people say, imagine this, I can't. Katie, that could be a lot of things in my mindset. There could be a blocking part that has cut off your ability to visualize. Maybe you had bad dreams, or you used to close your eyes and see a recurring picture. And so our brain commonly can form a part of us that cuts off the ability to kind of see in your mind's eye or to visualize in your head. But off the top of my head, I don't know.
Yeah, I've honestly never gotten that question. So are you saying, like, if I said, imagine a red apple, just imagine like a red apple. Are you saying?
I can see it without closing my eyes. Like I can see,
Yeah.
It's a red apple. I can't not see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like that clear. It's not like literally a red apple, but so I'm curious about that. Stephanie says, I am coming to the realization that I was scared of the label. It's almost like because I have the label, I have to have panic attacks. And I feel like I was creating it by that thought. I learned today to say, I am what I am in this moment. Yeah, that's a wonderful, wonderful realization. If that means I have panic sensations or I feel anxious, then that's what I am in this moment. I know it'll pass, and I try to drop all feelings about it, and I just let it be. Knowing it's not my forever, and knowing that I don't have to connect it to a label or disorder. Just let it be there and let it pass. Beautiful. I love that. That's really, really wonderful.
I would say, like, if you were having a panic attack right now, it would affect me a little bit.
Sure.
Like it would affect me. Like you'd be freaking out or shaking or whatever it is.
Or I'd be just like I am right now.
No. Are you having one right now?
No, I'm not.
But it would affect me. And so I would be, there's no way I couldn't be reactive to it. Even if I felt calm and I was like, I should probably help him.
Yeah.
It's affecting me. And I think that because we're so much closer to our feelings, like we're so much more, I'm so much more connected to my feelings than I am your feelings.
Sure.
Does that make sense? This might sound a little wacky, but I promise it's going somewhere. I'm so much more connected to my feelings, but I think it's useful to think about yourself as like a ton of different entities, just like you're a separate body from me. There's all these separate entities in myself. So what I love about what Stephanie is saying is like, I am what I am in this moment. Meaning if something's coming through me, that's just what I need to spend my time with, or that's what's happening, instead of judging it and labeling it. I would even take it a step further and say, what's happening is what's happening in this moment. Meaning, like, what Stephanie's doing is kind of unidentifying from the labels. I would even take it further and unidentify from the sensations and saying, you know, I am this. No, it's what is happening right now.
That's a good distinction.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Definitely. Yeah, it's like...
It's an important differentiation.
Not only are you not your label, but you're not even the momentary sensations. You are aware of those sensations as they pass through you. And so it's just a further acknowledgement that this isn't forever. You're not stuck. You are not this label. A lot of people who have all or nothing thinking, which a lot of us do, including myself, there can be this sense of like, if I have a bad day, then the mind goes, oh, well, now I'm just always going to have bad days. And if you have a string of really good days, you start to feel like, oh, I'm always going to feel good. I'm permanently healed. There's fluctuations, and the fluctuations don't have to mean anything in terms of like who you are or what you are or anything like that. It's as Jim was saying,
man, that just hearing you say that was such a return to a depth of consciousness, like such a deeper, another layer of like letting go of like yeah. No, but really it's such a breath of like, it feels we're you know, so much of our mind is wired to think certain ways or influenced to think certain ways and identify as this and hold value to this and put pressure on ourselves for this. And that's just such a key reminder of like, all I have to do right now is whatever.
Yeah, it's
like whatever.
Instead of saying like, I have to deal with this like life, I have to figure out my life, and it's like people are constantly trying to handle future situations that don't exist. And I don't even want to say don't exist yet. They don't exist.
Right, exactly.
It's like they may not ever exist. And so you can't handle the future. It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
Of course you can't. How do I cope with the future? You can't.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You can only cope with the present. And you only have to cope with the present. This moment, this moment, this moment. Are you surviving this moment? This moment. This moment. It's so enticing to want to go into the future. Like, okay, yeah, but you know, I'm doing pretty well here. Let me go into the future to try to predict what's going to happen next, or try to plan, and planning is great. Predicting is fine. You know, we have rent, we have bills. Like, I understand, like, thinking ahead, great. But when you go too far with it, or it gets irrational,
balance,
it just becomes like this fixing the future that doesn't exist.
Yeah. And ignoring the present, which is actually going to be the like the key element to construct whatever future comes forward.
Yeah.
So
Jennifer says, I suffer from CPTSD, done lots of therapy. It is from an abusive relationship, and I still get anxiety when I hear people raise their voice. Will it last forever? No, it doesn't have to last forever. There's ways to change your association with that. There's things like EMDR. There's IFS. There's many different therapies.
There's a lot of things you can do to work on the physical and the emotional connection with that. Jennifer, I would encourage you to send us a private message, and we'll set up a free phone call to hear a little bit more about the situation, see what you've done so far, because you says you've done lots of therapy, and then come up with some alternatives for some stuff that you haven't tried. And maybe it's a combination of a few different therapies and destimulating your nervous system and stuff.
Katie says, I can't see a red apple. I know what it looks like. So she's referencing when we asked her to imagine a red apple. I'm not sure what to say on that. There may be some pattern that's stuck, but you know, there are some people that are they're just not visual. Like, they're
has it always been like that, Katie, or is that new?
That's a good question.
Because like, I'm telling you, I've seen some wild parts form in people that have like, I have clients who they'll wake up in the middle of the night and there will just be gibberish in their head. And then when we do a little work, that's a part of them that's doing that consciously to block out negative thoughts or traumatic images and stuff like that. And it drives them. It's been driving them crazy for years. And once they connect with it, then the part backs off, and then it allows the the thoughts and images to flow through, and they're like, give me the scramble back.
Yeah.
Give me the scramble. Let me heal that. Thanks, guys. You have helped. Lisa says, thanks, guys. You've helped me so much in the few short weeks I've been watching you. You are both amazing. Lisa, you just warmed my heart.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. If there's anything we can do for you, let us know. Cindy says to Katie, I have the same issue. I can't picture things either. Katie says, but I can see an image in my mind's eye.
But I can't see an image in my mind's eye.
But I can't see an image in my mind's eye.
Please reach chat. I'd love to chat and just kind of
Katie, send us a message. Set up a call. It's free. No strings attached.
Don says, just life's ups and downs. Yep.
Wild. Jennifer says, thanks, I will do that. Katie says, as long as I can remember, but I remember having recurring dreams, nightmares, and fear of seeing ghosts.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe there's a part that just cut off any imagination. But it's common.
Yeah.
Our mind does amazing things to cope with traumatic and scary situations.
Our mind is you hear these stories of people who get, like Phineas Gage, if you ever heard that famous story, where, gets a steel rod blasted through his face, blasts a good third of his brain just gone, and he is functional. He is still like talking, and there's people who have entire huge chunks of their brain removed, and or they suffer immense trauma, immense hardship. And yet, the psyche heals. It heals. Your ability to recover, your ability to get over something, your ability to adapt, it's unbelievably effective. Wherever you are right now, you're not stuck. That's something we say a lot, but I think it's something that people have to be reminded of a lot. It really doesn't matter what you're going through. There's always a way to decrease the severity of the symptoms, to improve your life in some way, to add more joy and happiness to your life situation. Your malleability, your adaptability is incredible, both in physical, in mental, and in spiritual aspects. You can change. And so never forget that. Have the intention to change, improve, make the effort that you want to make, and things can happen. It really, really can.
I had an idea. What if we end with a little meditation, guided by you, and maybe I'll play a little guitar.
Yeah, you want to do that?
As a little background, yeah. So guys, we just want to thank, are you up for it?
Yeah, sure.
Just a short.
I've never done it with music, but sure.
Are you scared?
No, it's fine.
So guys, this is a spur of the moment jam session. This is how we jam: guitar and meditation.
Oh God! All right, let's do it.
But before we do, well, I guess we can say goodbye after. We'll just do a short little 2 to 3 minute meditation. Maybe something for, I don't know.
Something for processing emotions, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take a moment to just relax the whole body. Maybe you've been holding your breath. Maybe you've been holding your stomach in, tensing your shoulders. Whatever it is, just let go a bit. Relax a bit. And let yourself arrive to this moment. You've been moving quite a bit throughout the day, throughout your life. Lots of things to do, lots of things to figure out. Can you just settle into this moment for a bit and allow whatever it is that's here to be there? It's like we're reintegrating, coming together. The mind can be on yesterday, tomorrow, parts of us spread across our day. Let's just arrive and feel. whatever it is that you want to feel. It might not be a pleasant sensation. That's okay. It really is okay. Let yourself breathe. Open your eyes. Look around.
Good work.
Stretch. Go for a walk. Go for a stretch.
Give
go
Enis
for
a round of applause for the improv.
And the lovely, lovely guitar by Jim. I forget how good you are.
This is getting warmed up. I can't put it back.
Thanks so much, guys. For all of you out there, you're not stuck. Keep going. Keep doing this. You got this. We're here every Tuesday night. For more content, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Inner Solutions.
That's free.
For any questions, comments, reach out to us in the Facebook Messenger. We're here to help. So good luck with everything. Have a great week, and take care.
Thank you guys so much. Good luck. God bless.